Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's FS Club webinar. And this is a dual one. We are here today with Dr. Kevin Parker, a very long-term associate, really since the very founding of our firm back in 1994. Kevin is dialing in from Edinburgh, and it's sort of an odd one today because as chairman of the session, normally I should be impartial, but I'm delighted that we're going to be talking about a paper that Kevin and I wrote 20 years ago called Great Mistakes in Technology Commercialization. And this is a 20-year retrospective, which Kevin is providing very much based on what we did 20 years back. For both of us, it was probably one of our best cited papers, extraordinarily popular, and was drawing at that time on our then 20 years experience of commercializing technology. Kevin has gone on since that paper to become quite a renowned technologist, trainer, and educator on everything to do with technology commercialization, but we'll let you figure that out as we go along. Now we see here our sponsors who allow us to range widely and freely across technology, economics, and finance. And what more could you expect than to look at what are the secrets of success in technology commercialization? It's an area with very few hard and fast answers, and most of them born of experience. And a lot of the literature that you will read on statistical evaluations of it counters many of the so-called solutions government would put forward, such as business development banks, government funding of most R&D, and the lack of emphasis on education, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of policy issues in this space. Most of them are either unsupported or counterintuitive. And for those of you who want to start at a book I think is very interesting, I'd recommend Terence Keeley's 1995 Economic Laws of Scientific Commercialization, which of course is shows you that none of this stuff is known. Anyway, enough of me. We're here to listen to Kevin. The format, as ever, you'll know well as FS Club members. One, I'm here to get out of the way as quickly as possible. Two, yes, this is being recorded. Three, the slides are available. But most importantly, how do you participate? Well, Kevin and I are here with you, even if he is up in Edinburgh, I'm down here in London. But the truth is we're not on name your choice, WhatsApp, Twitter, email, text, etc. So what you need to do is type your questions, answers, comments, observations into the chat room, and I will feed those into Kevin in the final 20 minutes as we go into the Q&A. Now, just to get things going, we have an initial poll. So in fact, there are 3 polls here today, but we'll start off with the very first poll, which is on, we're just pulling that poll up now. Right? In 1991 to 92, Kevin investigated a large number of projects, over 50 actually, and I was there at the time, and it started at BP research back in the 80s. These projects included computer hardware and software, new materials, catalyst, energy storage, and engineering, pretty much everything except pharmaceuticals. And of those 50 projects, how many failed because the science and technology didn't work? So choose one of these categories. Out of 50 projects, how many didn't work? None or 1, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 30, or over 30. Kevin, we have a very, very opinionated audience at FS Club because they're very smart and know their mind. Over 3/4 of the audience have voted. So we're just going to close that poll and show you the results. Wow. So 43%, how many failed because the science and technology didn't work? So over 30, and that's really, I think, the preponderance of the audience, with 2 to 5 being around the 30% mark. Kevin, put us out of our misery. What's the answer?
The answer, Michael, was just 1. Only 1 of those projects failed because of what were called technical reasons. These were projects on which my old employer was spending hundreds of millions of pounds a year through the 1980s in an effort to become Bell Laboratories. And we can only point to 1 which was not, as they called it, a technical success. The technology all worked, and that told us immediately something about the inadequacy of the way that we managed this whole process.
Great. Well, Kevin, the floor is yours.
Right. Okay, thanks, Michael. So this is the paper for anyone that hasn't read it. I do hope that all of you have read and studied and learned everything, because what I'm going to be talking about mainly will be the new things we've learned over the last 20 years. For those who don't know me, my career has taken me from working as a laboratory scientist at British Petroleum, working with my own company, specializing in technical economic appraisal and technology commercialization, doing similar things with Michael at ZN, and a lot of pro bono stuff where I do business plan competitions, notably the UKRI Yes competitions. So hundreds of these things. I think the main thing that came out of our first paper was this. It was the distinction between what and how a product is made, its features, its science, its technology, for what it does for the customers, which the advertising industry called its benefits. And that distinction between features and benefits is really, really important. My PC has a 2 gigahertz chip, so what? That's the feature. The benefit, I can run the latest software on it. 2 bullet points down, my radio uses transistors instead of thermionic valves. This is a case study we talk about quite a lot. Yeah, so what? Well, what it means is because I have a radio with transistors instead of valves, I can make a radio that's portable, not plugged into the mains. I can make it affordable. I can make it so that everyone in the house has a source of music. So we get this huge benefit, which really does impact to the musical taste, particularly in the 1950s. Hey, I don't have to listen to Dad's choice of music all the time. Benefit 1, completely new possibilities. Benefit number 2, here's a piece of machinery. It has some interesting features, hydraulic actuation. What's the benefit? Well, there's one particular car company that would save a lot of money by using it. Benefit 2, saving money. Benefit 3, if saving money is good, but so is saving pain, so is saving hassle, so is making life easier. This is a positron emission tomography machine. This lets you detect the tumors from cancers without basically cutting people open. Non-invasive diagnosis, and that saves money, but particularly it saves grief and pain for the patients. And those were the 3 benefits we talked about. One of the things that really should have been apparent from our paper, but which I've had to labor over and over again when talking to nascent entrepreneurs, is this. And so I put it down as a new insight. People say to me things like this: we have no competitors because no one else is working on detecting breast cancers by positron tomography. Yes, well, a quick scan of the internet reveals that people are detecting these metastases by X-rays, by scintigraphy, by ultrasound, and even you can get dogs that sniff cancer. So the insight, the extra insight is this: competitors are people that can deliver the same benefit or innovation as you, not people using the same technology as you. The other exciting thing is that after several years of doing this, talking about 3 benefits, I realized there's a 4th benefit. We are interested in things which make us feel better about ourselves or change the way we think about ourselves. And it's not just the young man up here with his new trainers who's feeling happy. It is anything which helps our mental health. This is an example of a project I advise the Episcopal Church of Scotland on. It's a reading project where older people help younger people to read. She gets the benefit, her life changed because she learns to read. He gets the benefit because he feels good about himself. And mental health is an important issue. And if I go back to I won't go back. If I go back to the positron tomography one of the beautiful things about this technique compared to MRI is that with positron tomography, you can actually see the cancer cells dying when you start to give chemo or radiotherapy. Right, what was our mistake number 2? Our mistake number 2 that we talked about was the fact that people say things about the overall market size. The market is billions and we'll get 10%. The market is growing hugely and we can get in on it. And we called this top-down market analysis. The extra insight we have here is that not only does it lead to the wrong technical targets, it leads to speculative bubbles. It also causes people to underestimate the amount of money it's going to take to get to market. All right. So our new insight is that you have to do pretty early market testing. You have to talk to experts in the field. As an oncologist, if we could invent this, would it be useful to you? And the particular insight is that that has to be done not by market research companies, but by technical inventors or specialists. Can you tell us how good we have to be? Can you tell us what the technical targets are that we need to be taken seriously? And you'll get a response like, yeah, sure, you need to detect tumors a millimeter across with a 99% success rate and less than 1 in 1,000 false negatives. And you have to do that because you're the only person that can understand what they're saying, not the market researchers. Great mistake number 3, we talked about the chicken gun test, which is the essential practical test for user operability. We think this is a pretty robust great mistake. We're still seeing examples of this, notably by certain military operations in the Ukraine. We have tires ripping off. I think that's a very good exercise in end user practicality. Over the last 20 years, we've seen, in addition, the great growth in various digital technologies. What's the chicken gun test for digital technologies? And I come back to things like user interface issues, platform interoperability. Is it easy to use your beautiful new digital software? Great mistake number 4 was commercialization projects are complex and people are not doing this process well. With the projects that I did an analysis on at British Petroleum, we found that this process was routinely done poorly, and there was no way of people that had been involved in one project for actually doing post-project reviews, saving their expertise and saying things like, hey, next time we'd have done something very, very differently. There was a project that I worked on in my early years at ZN with a government agency. We had customers. It was very frustrating. The project was delayed for something like 18 months while all the various interested parties argued about location and equity. It needed basically someone in charge. And the frustration was there is all sorts of methodology around, like Prince2, etc., that lets you address these issues. Our new insight is often this happens with startups because they don't spend enough time thinking about and building the team of people they're going to operate. I was at a conference a few weeks ago where I heard a lot of people presenting about their successful startups. And I kept hearing the phrase, surround yourself with good people. Well, I'm sorry, that's not useful advice, is it? I mean, no one actually sets out trying to surround themselves with bad people. You need to actually think about things like, how's your team going to evolve? What are the team role preferences of the players? Do we talk about Belbin test? Do we talk about Myers-Briggs? And as I've said, this is commonly a weakness in university spin-outs and startups. The next one, which is often overlooked again in things going out of the university world, is the complexity of IP ownership. When I wrote the original paper, I was really talking about projects coming out of major companies. Projects coming out of universities often have messy intellectual property. And I don't mean whether it's got patents or not. It's just simple stuff like who actually owns the intellectual property. It's been invented by a principal investigator who's been at 5 different universities in their career. Which one of them actually has the intellectual property? We get people coming to us saying, hey, I know I worked at this university, but they have no claim on my intellectual property. To which, of course, the answer is, that's fine, but we want a letter from that university telling us that. What's the 5th great mistake? It's misvaluation. people not valuing platform technologies properly. We made the point that platform technology has two lots of value: the net present value of the current project arising from that technology, and the opportunity to invest in all of the other projects enabled by that technology, which is usually undervalued. And the whole thing takes longer than you first think. And as a result, companies don't ask for or get enough money. Michael, Peter, could we have the second Zoom poll now, please?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we got that. This is a slightly complicated one, but for Kevin, on his first job, what was the ratio of his salary to his travel and overhead budget and to the gross profit he generated for the company? So
Yeah.
salary, overhead, gross profit.
Michael, you could add that what I was doing was an interesting job selling BP oil around the world. So I was literally selling oil to the Arabs. So there was an international travel budget in there.
Okay. First class business?
Oh, absolutely. Well, some of the world's most desirable airlines, like Bulgarian Airlines and Sudan Airways and Aeroflot.
All right. Well, nearly half the audience has voted, so we'll leave it there. Yeah, I was flying from Guernsey to London the other day, and I was on Orly Airways. And what I loved was you get in at the back and you turn left, and as the stewardess kindly said, everything here is first class. So anyway, the audience have completely voted. Let's show those results there. Okay, Kevin. So you got a pretty good spread here, frankly. What's the right answer?
Okay, the answer is that my overheads were nearly 10 times my salary. I was being paid about, and this is the 1980s, I was being paid about 10,000 a year. I was generating a gross profit of about £500,000 a year on the products I was selling. But it was costing BP over £100,000 by the time it had paid my travel budget and my overheads. Right? So selling is expensive. And I'd like to make the point that I was selling well-established, fairly uncomplicated products.
Okay.
Okay. One of the insights is we then that leads us on to, for those of you ever doing the pitch, if it's bad to ask for too much money, it's even worse to ask for too little. Right? If you ask for too much money, investors will say, yeah, that's a bit greedy, we can knock you down. If you ask for too little money, you're in danger of saying something ridiculous. Oh yes, I just need £100,000 to develop my new therapeutic. And all investors will know you don't need £100,000, you don't need £500,000, you need 5 million for that, and immediately makes you look stupid and destroys your credibility. So don't ask for too little money. Yep, so the cost of selling, I've talked about that. There's a picture of some of the delightful places I went on that job. One question I'm always asked is, can the internet replace traditional sales methods in B2B finance? And I don't know the answer to that question. I'd be interested in people's opinions. Right. Can we have the final Zoom poll, please, Michael?
Great. Well, this is probably, I guess, the core one here, really. On average, how many people do you think you have to train to get one successful entrepreneur? And this is based on work that Kevin and I have done within the MOD, within BP, as Kevin mentioned, within Scottish Enterprise, and within universities. And this one was a little bit easier, Kevin, for folks to answer than your three-way split in the previous one. So everybody's pretty much answered. We'll close that and show the results. And so people believe you have to train, you've led the audience, about 250 got the 40% mark.
Yeah. Okay.
So what's the right answer?
So in my, I actually have looked at this because I have a rough idea of how many people I've trained, which is somewhere over 5,000 at various UK universities. And I can point to about 30 that have actually been successful. And by successful, I mean not just established a company, but derive some value from it, like an exit. It's about 1 in 150 in my experience. There are ways to improve that. There are ways we should improve that, but that's my feel at the moment. So I think my final slide for now. Great mistakes. Do we need to improve? These were some of the points that are grayed out here that we talked about in the original paper. We have a new insight that it takes 150 people trained. Is this relevant? Well, I'm based in Scotland. The Scottish Government commissioned a report on the Scottish tech cluster in 2021. The cluster we have in Scotland is bigger than anything in the UK outside the Golden Triangle of London, Oxford and Cambridge. And the person writing the report, Mark Logan, founder of Skyscanner, put up this slide. We need 500 startups to go to 50 small scale ups to get to 1 unicorn. We need 5,000 pre-startups. And my comment on that, which I'll be talking to him over the next couple of weeks about, is you're actually going to need to train something like 15,000 people to get those 5,000 pre-startups. And by the way, that's 20% of the annual output of graduates in Scotland. So we do need to get better at this. And that's my final slide, avoiding the great mistakes, features and benefits, top-down market analysis, chicken gun test, good project management, and asking and getting enough money. And I'm happy to take questions from there.
Excellent. Well, we've got a few questions here, folks. Please do put in your comments, questions, and observations. I'll kick off with one early on. This is from Charles, Vermont. Charles is in the insurance sector, particularly in reinsurance broking, and he's asking, my hit rate on new ideas in the reinsurance market is around 3 out of 20. Is this your experience? Now, you obviously gave some numbers there, but you might want to comment on that, Kevin, and how much it varies industry to industry.
Yeah, I mean, when I was selling stuff, I reckon my hit rate was 1 in 10. You know, it took me 10 meetings to get 1 sale. The difference in technology commercialization is you've got so many things that can go wrong. If you look at the whole process of inventing a new technology, developing it, refining it, getting it to market, so there's far more opportunities for things to go wrong, and so I think that's where you get the sort of 1 in 50 ideas makes it 1 in 10 well planned, well-funded projects funded by some of the investors I know will succeed. So
well, yeah, early on you spoke about a sort of a twist on your first point, was about the importance of examining the competitors. That point that you pointed up there, where you were explaining that it's not just you know, being able to do something in tomography as a sole person, but actually what the benefit is. I was curious when I was running some research in the automotive industry in Britain. I was regaled constantly, and also in the aerospace industry, this is the best British technology. And this is in the mid 80s, and I used to go, nobody wants the best British technology. They want the best technology. Technology is effectively agnostic. But I've noticed in a lot of my dealings most recently with the government, they want me to showcase British technology. And I'm like, I don't want to showcase British technology. I might want to showcase British connections, knowledge connections. You know, your slide there just a moment ago about the Scottish seemed to imply Scottish technology. How much does this nationalistic stuff interfere with getting the job done?
It can do. It's not so much nationalism. It's, we know certain industries are very much NIH, not invented here. So the car industry for years was very reluctant to talk to people outside the industry, irrespective of where they came from. I don't think that nationalism is a particular issue in this, except that every country has a technology strategy and every country wants to be good at this stuff, and they can't all be the best.
Okay. Got a question here from Donald McCrae. What policy levers could we pull to improve the commercialization rate? Well, you've indicated training, you've got to recognize the scale of training.
We could train more people, we could get young people interested, so that's a cultural thing. Certainly in smaller economies, and where I work, Scotland is a smaller economy, there is some people think there's a shortage of not startup finance. There's plenty of startup money around. It's the money that you need at the point when your entrepreneurs want to exit. So typically we've had 140 odd exits in Scottish startups over the last few years, and only 3 or 4 of them have stayed in Scotland. So making more liquidity at that point would be useful. And the third thing is having good and clear rules about intellectual property and ownership thereof.
Okay. Chris David says these development numbers, say 5,000 startup ideas needed for 1 unicorn, or whatever they are, they imply a very, very small hit rate, much smaller than a 1 in 10 sales call. Suggests that we might want to look for a different model for success. And if I can tag something on personally to Chris's good point, I frankly am getting a wee bit sick of this idea that what we need are more entrepreneurs. Is this really the right thing? The excruciating dragons' dens, etc., but leading to shallow, thin, Me Too ideas and a culture based on get rich quick. Is this really the way that we're actually going to develop properly in terms of scientific technology commercialization?
Yeah, to be fair to the author of the report, what he was saying was you need those numbers to develop an ecosystem like they had in Silicon Valley, where the fact that one startup fails doesn't matter because its people gain experience and go and join the eventual unicorns. So yes, what people would really like is not to grow entrepreneurial companies, but to grow indigenous tech companies. In Scotland, certainly from the beginning, it's why isn't there a Scottish Nokia? Why isn't there a Scottish multinational? Denmark has something like 12 successful multinational companies, not all of which are technology, but all of which are good at keeping their customers happy. And Scotland has really 1.5. So yeah, that's the aim, but you need resources for that. One question is, do you actually have a big enough economy to absorb all of the innovations coming out of your university sector?
Yeah, well, I also wonder sometimes, innovation is an inherently wasteful process. It has to be. That's the whole point of it, is we don't focus on the failure, we focus on the successes. But if you do look at the failures, you realize a lot of money was wasted, a lot of time and effort is gone, and there was only kind of one deterministic path to success that was there, but you just didn't know it in advance. So there's a lot to be said for being a country that doesn't waste time on innovation and just copies things and implements them well. Ian Taylor here, is the real issue the entrepreneurs or access to scale up capital? You've drained the families and friends' resources, then you need to scale. And this too has been a mantra in Britain. The banks don't lend, the VCs aren't the way they are in America. But I often wonder, frankly, if some of them are just bad business ideas. That why do I want to put my money in a bad one? Maybe what we've actually got are poor British entrepreneurs and extremely good analysts in the banks and investment outfits. But how real is this scale gap? And I must say, McKinsey makes a huge to do about it. Britain's problem is this inability to make that investment leap. But maybe it's just they're not good firms.
Yeah, it could be. I would say to young entrepreneurs who are starting out, want to make a quick buck, there's a lot of money around. There's the proverbial shed loads of money, particularly in the Golden Triangle, but we have a lot in Scotland. It's never been easier to get startup finance. And if there is an issue, it's when it comes to, when it comes to what we call intermediate monies, when it comes to taking that startup, which has grown to 100 people, and the money needed for it to grow to 1,000 people to go international. We have fund managers up here, and it's not clear that, for example, they're investing very much in pre-startup, in pre-quoted companies. So there is a gap, but it's at that stage, I think.
Okay, well, I've just posted in the chat area, folks, as well as Peter has kindly put in a link to Kevin and my original paper, which is online for free. But Hugh Purser put in some numbers from Nexia. Nexia is a startup and VC firm. I always take these numbers with a grain of salt, but they're very in line with Kevin's numbers about the success rate. Kevin, one of the things that Hugh points out is they make a point here about timing being critical. Possibly much more critical than the idea of the funding, hitting the nail at the right time.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have any trouble thinking of many of those types of inventions. What are your thoughts on timing? How can you tell that your timing is right, or you're too early or too late?
Only really by having those very early discussions with potential customers along the lines of, we think we can do this. Is this A, useful in theory, and B, realistically, if it is useful to you, or if it would be useful to you, what's the kind of process involved? I used to have a job, my last job at BP, part of it was answering questions from inventors who'd come along and approach us and say, hey, I've got this better way of doing X or Y. And we'd have to tell them something like, yeah, this is good. Probably 18 months is the earliest that we'd be able to pick up and even do some field trials on, just because of the nature of our budgeting process. Can you survive that long?
Well,
big companies.
Well, that's an interesting one about survive that long. Richard Sage has a point. What about the idea that a successful business should generate cash to fund its own expansion? And I might add to that your earlier point, which was that you believe that one of the lessons over the last 20 years has been that early market testing is useful. And isn't the best market testing, will anybody buy it?
Yeah. Or could you persuade people to at least do a beta test with you, or a field trial, or something that, something that gets you money, even small amounts, is really important. It gives you credibility with potential customers. It also is incredibly good for the morale of the project team. I remember selling my first ever piece of consultancy and how exciting it was.
Well, I must say, of the 5 lessons, the 2 that come back to me the most are the chicken gun test, which is really science itself. It's what hypothesis could you place that would tell you that this is a good thing, based on that RB 211 or whatever, which we dug into, didn't we? We found out it was actually a true story. They really had avoided it, and really did have frozen chickens that were part of the test, not a flaw, and broke the blades. And the other one I've always loved is that top-down market analysis. And nobody owes you a share of the market, and you're not going to get it. But let me just pick up on John Taylor is curious. You've emphasized intellectual property, and I've always had some problems with the way that's expressed. I believe in intellectual secrecy. Keep your secret sauce secret. Patents are only a tool to defending. They're not actually the be-all and the end-all. But John Taylor is a lawyer, and he's asking, in addition to IP, are there other legal barriers?
Well, yes. Probably, I'm trying to think. There are issues around one's ability to reach certain international markets. It became a lot easier to sell into mainland Europe once there was a single market. And the process that I had to go through in order to export just drums of oil out to different parts of the world was complex, tricky. So there are legal barriers to trade, certainly, which I can happily amplify if anyone's interested in how to sell oil to the Arabs. But there was a multi-step process required.
We have a question from Michael Dury. You talk about size of market, but am I wrong in thinking that Israel, a much smaller country than the UK, does better than the UK? And if so, why is that?
Israel, it's not just Israel. Another country I could quote is Denmark. Another country I can quote is Slovenia, the ex-Yugoslav Republic.
Yes.
Those
Switzerland. Yeah.
Yeah. Those countries from the start knew they were tiny and knew that they had to export. They did not just think of their domestic market. And curiously, I think the problem is in middle-sized countries or markets where, oh, we can make a comfortable living just by selling in our domestic market. Yugoslavia had a market of 20 million people. That was fine. Everyone was happy. Suddenly, Slovenia found itself with a domestic market of 2 million people. Oh goodness, we really, really have to export. Israel's been like that from the start. And this is going to be a shock to the system. I have no views on Scottish independence, being an Englishman. I'm completely agnostic on it. But what I do say to my friends up here is independence is just the start, and it's going to change the lives of everyone in business.
Yeah, and it could go in a number of ways. I mean, certainly one of the big issues here in the UK has been being cut out of Project Horizon, which means we're losing the connectivity. So back to that nationalism is, if it's anything, it's not a good thing. Whereas what we need are those knowledge connections. Charles Vermont, two questions really. What should an investor look for in a venture capital trust, quite quickly?
In a venture capital trust?
Yeah.
Not the projects. I think you would look for people that have a good, well-defined methodology. I mean, are they able to pick winners? That's by starting a venture capital trust, they're basically saying, hey, we can pick good projects. Now, we know that governments aren't terribly good at picking winners. So what evidence do these people have? And it's not just have they had a few successes, because that could be down to luck. Have they got a process that they can clearly demonstrate? Yeah, we always do this, this, and this. We always, for example, we always make the team members have a Belbin test to see if they're compatible. For example, that could be one thing to do. Have they got a process like that, and is it convincing? That's what I'd be looking for.
Okay. Charles Vermont was asking, what's the effect of corruption on innovation? But oddly, I think it ties to a question Frank Moxon has. What about big companies buying emerging tech and stifling it? I've seen oil companies do this to prevent competition. And on a personal note, I will agree with Frank, in many other sectors, I've seen that as well. So in mining, in pharmaceuticals, in electronics, in software. I mean, just look at the licensing in any of the big boys at the tail end of their stuff. There is this thing that the patent system is actually stifling innovation. I believe it's since 2010 that the amount spent on litigation exceeds royalties globally in that space. So it's a great business for lawyers. But what it actually does is it means the scale of your patent portfolio is your defense, and it's the legal bills that would be incurred fighting you that is your defense. It's not because you're brighter, smarter, or faster than anyone else. But maybe it doesn't quite fulfill Charles's point, but it does smell a bit of corruption.
Yeah, is it corruption? Is it unethical behavior? So yes, one of the things that we would always ask new startups when they're writing their business plan is, where do you want to market? And one of the things that if they say we want to market in the United States and we've got patents, then we always ask them, have you got enough money in your business plan to not just establish those patents, but to actually go out and defend them, which is something they've often never thought about. And so, yeah, it's a litigious place and it's a very expensive place. So that, you could say that's a form of corruption or unethical behavior. It certainly does militate against people going into those markets. At the other extreme, I've seen cases of Russian businessmen who've actually set up business in the UK in order to sell products back to they were making exotic hi-fi. And they were Russians and selling to the Russian market, but they were doing that with a company in the UK, basically to avoid what they considered to be difficult operating conditions on the ground.
Great. And Kevin, this is the last question today. Folks, just a reminder, you can type into the chat room. Kevin will be getting all of the comments and questions with your email attached. If you want to get hold of him, do that. Although He's also left his contact details on the slides as well, and is very happy to engage. And Kevin, the last question really is, I think, quite an interesting one to end on, because you spend a lot of time in training, and this is from Donald McCrae again. And Donald is curious, can you successfully split academic discovery and then successful commercialization between different people, which to some degree goes to this bit about what's an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I would think the answer is not only can you do it, in 90% of cases you have to do it. Of the people that I know that have been successful, that I've worked with, there's probably one or two cases where the person who came up with the science has actually been the successful entrepreneur. I've actually been the CEO. One's in biotech, one is in physical sciences, noise and vibration technology reduction. But the vast bulk of the others, you would say that whilst there is an inventor, they may do the early stuff, you do need to split that pretty early on. And one of the things about the training that is often missed is you're not just training the entrepreneur, you're actually training all of the people who might potentially want to go and work for the entrepreneur. You're training all the people who might advise the entrepreneur. In some cases, you're training professors who would never ever leave their academic career, but at least they'll know what makes an investable project that they can advise the inventor. So yes, you generally do have to split it.
Kevin, that's been fascinating. Really good to do a 20-year retrospective. I don't think we do enough of them. We have done a few. If you look on the site, folks, you'll find them on the value scenario planning and strategic planning 25 years on and things like that. But it is important, I think, to go back and have a look. And I like the way that you've enriched the stuff that we did 2 decades back. We've got a lot of other comments and questions here on the commercialization clauses in the patent system, or trade difficulties, moving money, etc. Those we'll get on to, Kevin. But time presses, I'm afraid. I hope you've enjoyed today. Obviously, have a look at the website if you want to see what's coming up, because my job's not to read the website for you. You don't want it either. It's not exactly the shipping forecast. But next Tuesday, we are going to be looking at the cybersecurity landscape. And we've also got a week Monday, a really interesting one on catastrophes. Are they becoming too big to insure? Meanwhile, Kevin, all I can do is say 3 quick rounds of thanks. Firstly, to our sponsors. Secondly, to you, the audience, for being quite vibrant today. It makes my role not just more, not just easier, but much more fun. And Kevin, a delight to see you up there in Scotland, and great that you took the time to share with our team here your thoughts and reflections.
My pleasure. Thank you.